Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber.
And
this
I'm
is
Zane
the Gruber
Courtney.
Morning Show. And Zane Courtney, sorry I interrupted his intro here.
I'll slip in there eventually.
Let's go right to the picture in the background.
Oh, gorgeous.
So this is in southern Germany, in Bavaria, not too far from my hometown actually. What you see in the backdrop there are the Alps and Austria. Actually, Salzburg is not too far from where we're sitting. And across the street there, you'll see maybe a cow or a horse or something. It's livestock time there. Wonderful farmhouses, lots of fruit trees. It's a wonderful scenic part of the world. Anyway, we were staying at this bed and breakfast, and you see a lot of stonework here too. If you notice the floor outside here, they use granite and make cobblestone not only patios but streets. You go into downtown, villages, which are oftentimes medieval, and they continue with the granite cobblestones. There's a very particular way of laying those too. They have like these circular patterns, and they get really creative with it. But,
gorgeous.
and of course, they last forever. You know, there are ancient Roman roads that still go through Germany, and they're still in existence. You can't wear down granite very easily. So anyway, that's where we're sitting, is inside or by a patio there in Solhüben is the name of the town. And each of these little villages have like their own church, and then they have their own beer garden in this case, which is Hitzinga. And everything's within walking distance, and lots of tradition too. Around Easter time when we were there, they have this, I forget what it's called in German, but the whole town comes out. They all dress up in their traditional costumes. The guys are wearing the hats with the goat's bristle hats, yeah. And lederhosen, of course, and they even have a militia that comes out. I don't think these guys could really, protect very much these days because they're pretty geriatric. But it's
very decorative.
All the traditions is just so fascinating, and very much rooted in religion. My brother was telling me that the girls, my nieces, get religious training in school, and I go, "You got to be kidding me! Which religion?" He says, "Well, Catholic. Everybody's here is Catholic."
Yeah, checks out.
So
you would think it'd be Lutheran, but
but that is the story with our picture or our background. Got a lot of stuff to cover with you guys this morning. It looks like we've got some people that are chiming in.
Good morning, everybody. And again, thank you so much for leaving your comments. You guys truly drive the show. So shout out to you guys on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, LinkedIn, if we get those guys up and running. But for all you guys, thank you so much for leaving your comments. We've got one from Van Goatwagon on TikTok. Good morning. Diego R.P. Rodriguez from YouTube. Very nice Gruber Motor Company. And from Nico Rudy on YouTube. Hello from Finland.
Finland, there you go. All right. We're starting to reach out and get some global responses.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Please let us know where you're from. It's so much fun to see what audience that we're being able to impact and where you guys are coming from. And it's fun to get to check in on what everybody's doing in the EV world.
So speaking of global agenda items, we spoke last year about this. Tesla Roadster number VIN 507 is a world traveler. It broke records 10 years ago, traveling around the world on strictly electric juice. And it is currently on its way to Florida. It was supposed to have been unloaded. It's on a clipper ship, a sail ship, and the goal here was the team that owns this is very much focused on alternative energy transportation. The problem is this is not a mechanized sailboat, and the winds aren't cooperating. There is still a strong headwind, which is keeping the clipper ship right now around Cuba.
Yeah, that's a traditional way of getting around.
So it's not hitting landfall yet in Florida, but we feel that within the next 3 days or so it will. Once it does, it's going to be unloaded, and then it's going to make its way here to our shop in Phoenix, Arizona to get a new battery pack, which got bricked in a museum in Munich a year or two ago. So anyway, it is on its way, and can we throw up, we got a picture of the clipper ship. This is the Aventur is what it's called, 2 U's in there. And the cargo hold has a Tesla Roadster in it. So it went all the way across the Atlantic from Europe to Florida when it arrives, completely emission-free, using only the winds.
Just
on
the way
ocean.
that the sailors intended.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Looks like we've got a couple more questions there.
From Why Not on TikTok. Hi guys, you're great. Need help. He needs 30 followers. You're a great need for help. He's got a 2013 Model S with only 12,000 miles and the heater's not blowing out.
Oh, there is a heating.
Oh, it's not blowing
element.
hot. Yeah.
There is a heating element that runs off the 400 volts or the high voltage. It's fairly accessible underneath the front frunk, and you know, a simple ohm meter will tell you whether you have an open heating coil or not. It is easily replaced, nothing major, but that's what it sounds like. Yeah. Check your fuses as well. There's some relays and fuses up toward the top of the Tesla Model S, and check each one of those to see if anything there is faulty.
New Teslas are being built with heat pumps for that reason. That
really?
Most new EVs are getting heat pumps, one to address the heating issue because batteries and people like to operate at those same temperatures, but also because it also gives you a couple miles extra range with that battery preconditioning.
So it's probably more efficient, and you get both heat and cooling out of a heat pump.
So it's unfortunate that these older Teslas do have to still deal with that battery-powered heating element there.
So France appears to be warming up to electric vehicles. In November, the Tesla Model Y and Model 3 were the top electric vehicle sellers in that country. They took 10th and 11th position. It's also worth noting that the Tesla Model Y was the #1 sales in the UK and Norway in the month of November as well. So it looks like Europe is really warming up to electric vehicles.
Was that a pun? Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, it's funny because we had talked a bit about how China was also the #1 for Tesla Model Y thanks to Shanghai, but it was actually overtaken by BYD in the month of November.
Amazing, yes. So Tesla has competition. Despite that, the demand remains very strong. TikTok, Why Not, says, could it be the heating element? It is. It could be a fuse, but I would look at that heating element. And then Nikarudi in Finland, he says, people in Finland don't even want to buy cars without heat pumps.
Oh yeah, for good reason.
Yeah.
That seems like a necessity in colder climates, I would think.
And your range is seriously declined by trying to keep a car warm in a country that's that cold. You know, speaking of declining range, I should have taken a picture. A couple days ago, somebody towed a Tesla Roadster from Sedona to our shop with a Model X.
Huh.
They went and got a U-Haul trailer hitch and trailer, put their Roadster on it, and towed it all the way down to our shop. Sedona's about 140 miles or so from Phoenix,
something
150,
like that.
something like that.
Couple hours.
But what he said was interesting was his range on that Model X was reduced by 50%.
Oh, wow.
So it was doing some work.
Yeah. It's funny, we've talked about how semis are going to be a liable solution for towing and hauling in within 300-mile ranges, something like that. But even on the ground with smaller EVs like the Model X, and it's capable of pulling a surprising amount. The Rivian R1T and R1S, the R1T can pull, I think it's 7,500 pounds? Oh no, I think it might be.
Yeah, it's more than that. We saw
11,000.
We saw him towing an 11,000 pound Airstream.
That's what it was. It was the 11,000 pounds for the R1T, and it was somewhere around, I think, 9,000, maybe even less for the R1S, just because of the internal structure. But it's funny that the towing problem, it goes back and forth, because if you have enough weight to push on you while you're going downhill, then you actually get much more regen back.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a give and take there with some towing.
So according to Green Car Reports, EV battery costs have soared in 2022 due to rising raw materials and battery component prices. This is according to the Bloomberg New Energy Finance report. The difficulty appears to be with lithium-ion cells, not lithium iron or LFP cells, which use cobalt. And cobalt apparently is skyrocketing, probably because of demand. These types of rarer metals tend to fluctuate greatly when the demand begins to peak. So average prices could have been even higher in 2022 had it not been for the increased adoption of the lower cost lithium iron phosphate cells, also known as LFP. The F stands for ferro, which of course is iron. Using that chemistry as an alternative to the nickel manganese cobalt used by many manufacturers.
Yeah, and we've actually got a relevant comment here from Van Goat Wagon on TikTok from Redwood Materials. They just spent $3.8 billion on land in Charleston, South Carolina. I believe that's for a lithium deposit, if I'm correct about that. I was just listening to this. There's lithium in South Carolina, there's cobalt actually in Nevada, and there's also some lithium deposits out there. So there's 3 mines that are just getting commissioned to be opened out there in Nevada for getting these materials, not too far from Redwood. Mm-hmm. So Redwood's going to be much more interested in, I think, preserving a lot of that in Nevada. And I think we talked a little bit about that on last week's show in regard to Redwood Materials being in a really good position to start recycling more of those materials out there. And apparently South Carolina is as well. Both the Carolinas, I believe, have some healthy lithium deposits out there.
So these battery price increases are coming despite many recent battery manufacturing announcements. In fact, we have one of them. A big plant is coming here to Arizona. We'll get into that later, ABF. But so BNEF expects the market to stay on its current trajectory in 2023, predicting average pack prices of $152 per kilowatt hour. The goal apparently is to get it down to $100 per kilowatt hour or lower, which at that point they feel that EVs can achieve price parity with gasoline cars. And they're projecting that will happen by 2026.
Yeah, especially since with rising energy costs to charge as well. The give and take right now seems to be a gas car you can get pretty cheap, but gas is expensive. Whereas if you pay a lot of money up front for an EV, you have to spend less on charging. And that seems to be the give and take right now. And so hopefully we'll be able to break even by adopting more EVs, which will increase the bounty of energy. And so we'll hopefully be able to see equal, if not lower prices in the future. But that's all hope. And that's there's also a segment we've got coming up about energy production. And there was another comment from, there it is, from Nick Arudi, talking about in Finland that the Model Y was actually 4th place behind the Volkswagen ID4, the Polestar 2, I believe that would be Polestar 2, and a Skoda Enyaq.
Okay.
Now the ID4's been getting a lot of flack lately because they have not been doing well in cold weather temperatures. They've seen the most significant range reduction out of any other EV, and that's partially probably because it doesn't have a heat pump, and most of them are either rear-wheel drive, or the all-wheel drive is significant, uses a significant amount of battery, so that checks out.
Guys, we're also streaming on Facebook these days, and we have a Facebook visitor, Richard J. Junkermeyer Jr. Hello, Richard. And he's saying, howdy, guys. In fact, Richard, one of our social media team members, was telling me this morning that Facebook, apparently, our videos are doing very well on there. One of them is up over 800,000 views. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we've got one that's a little over 800,000, one that's breaching 250,000, and then one that's just over 100,000 within the last week.
Nice.
Yeah. And you know what people like is what's going on under the hood with an EV, and that's essentially what these videos were. We were showing a Tesla Roadster battery pack and showing one of the sheets and one of the cells that had gone resistive. And now people have a visual to attach to this nebulous concept of, well, my battery pack is declining and there's a resistive cell, but what does that mean?
Yeah, you guys do a really good job of showing all that stuff. I love following you guys on the Shorts channel specifically to see more of the guts under these Roadsters and some of the process you guys put out. It's tons of fun. And I say that not even as a member of the show. It's just cool stuff. So that's something for everybody to know. Be sure to check out Gruber Motors on pretty much everywhere, and you can get more of that content under the hood.
TikTok has a lot of those types of shorts, and yeah, now we're on YouTube Shorts, we're Facebook Shorts, And again, people like it. It's easy for us to do because every day when you walk over into Gruber Motor Company, that's what's going on. They're under the hood in those vehicles. They're inside the battery packs. They even open up the electronics and they chip chase and troubleshoot right down to component level. And that is a rare skill. That does not happen in any other auto shops at this point anyway.
Pete, we got some interaction from LinkedIn coming in here.
Yes, and good morning to LinkedIn. We've got a couple. I know someone said hello to you on LinkedIn. From Michael Kluge on LinkedIn, if a heat pump is allowed in underground parking, it's okay. Due to the permanent flow of water from a heat pump, we get a 500-pound penalty, or sorry, 500 euro penalty from the owner of the underground parking space. 3 Model Ys are creating a lot of water there. Interesting. So I suppose this is where you're parking underground. You're the owner of Model Y. You're parking underground, and the heat pump that's in there is creating a lot of condensation.
That's what it sounds like. Although with a non-heat pump Tesla, with a electric air conditioning compressor, you're also generating a lot of condensation if it's a humid environment. That's an interesting problem. I had not heard that there are actually penalties and fines for the generation of water. It looks like they're not going to like hydrogen either, are they?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, due to the permanent flow of water from the heat pump. Yeah, that's a really interesting problem. I can't believe it's already been addressed and fined so heavily. Goodness.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Michael Kluge.
Absolutely.
So I've got an interesting article here, what the truckers' response is to the Tesla Semi.
Oh, yeah.
Now, bear in mind, despite the complaints that we have in this particular article, it's coming, and the end of allowing fossil fuel heavy trucks will end in some states by 2040. California is the first. And other states typically follow California's lead. So if you're in the business of driving a large semi, you're not going to be able to do that in California by 2040 and possibly other states. So here's what some of the issues are. The trucking industry is already struggling to find enough qualified truckers to fill its routes. Ever since COVID, we've noticed that ourselves. We have cars that are transported in every week. And it's gotten more and more difficult to find transporters that are able to and available to bring cars in. Not only that, but the costs have gone way up, almost tripled in some cases, East Coast routes especially. So there are some issues, but the ban on diesel trucks is likely to make some of these problems worse, at least short term. Now here's some comments from the truckers that were polled with this whole semi question. How would they feel about driving an electric semi? Buddy Holly in Missouri answered, don't want it, don't need it, no way. He drives 550 to 600 miles a day, and he said if he had to stop every 400 miles to charge for half an hour, his days would get considerably longer.
Even with the 1 megawatt charging that it's getting introduced, it's going to have a huge impact on everything from the Cybertruck and possibly on. But yeah, those semis are no joke. Those are still hungry.
Now, Mr. Holly also adds, he says, the laws in California regarding what roads trucks are allowed to drive are so difficult, he avoids driving there at all. That probably explains why we're having a hard time getting transportation out of California at times as well. Now, here's another trucker, Roy Smith from Baltimore. Long-haul trucker from Baltimore. He said it takes him 5 minutes to refuel now. He's not keen on the idea of an extra 25 minutes per stop, as well as much more frequent stops. He says, I sometimes do friggin' 800 miles a day. Having to charge every 400, that's just not efficient. No, that's not good at all. Ain't gonna work.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is, again, something to consider for the adoption in regards to, well, how viable is it? You know, some things you just can't force. It's a good thing, especially within a certain range. I mean, we've talked about how anything within a 300-mile range is a great option for semis and things like that for pulling larger loads over hills and valleys where they can get all the brake regen capabilities back. It's a great spot for those, but is it going to be able to take over the entire market? Time will tell. Maybe not. And it's unfortunate to see these heavy pushes for it and some inevitable criticism coming back.
So the article continues. It says, the Tesla Semi only has one gear, meaning the driver isn't constantly banging gears. The driver's seat is situated at the center of the cab, meaning that the driver now has full view of everything around the truck. First thing that jumps to mind is hitchhiking and truckers picking up hitchhikers dead? Possibly, if the guy sitting in the center, is there enough room?
Well, they still got a
for,
back seat in there. They still got a full cab.
I don't know, yeah. And they say it's also equipped with dual touch screens running Tesla software, which means the truck largely drives itself with minimal inputs from the driver. Well, that may be good news, because if truck drivers are difficult to find now, if the skill level required to drive one of these big rigs reduces, we may be able to backfill.
The people who do it, so my brother is a trucker out in Oklahoma, and he actually, I've talked to him about this, and you know, something about truckers that's really cool is that they're also very kinesthetic people. And they love that feeling of engaging with the vehicle while they drive. And that's what helps them go such long distances, because they're more active. And so, and that's why Lexus, it's probably a part of the reason why Lexus has actually poured so much money into creating a placebo manual transmission for some of these EVs, which we've covered in a previous show. Be sure to check out that episode. But, you know, it's interesting to see, you know, the other side of it, where, hey, on these longer trips, say, let's say you are going further than 300 miles, you know, maybe it's a good idea to have just a little extra help out there. And with such a wide cabin, it seems like you're in a good position there.
So staying with the Semi for a moment, Elon claims that the the Semi, is designed to make jackknifing impossible. A jackknifing is a dangerous situation where the trailer swings to one side as the truck slows down, and it's something that drivers are careful to avoid. It usually happens on icy conditions where a lot of weight in the back, you begin to stop, and that big, long trailer behind you wants to swing out, and suddenly you've got a jackknifing condition. As Elon points out, he says, your worst nightmare with this truck is gone. It looks like we have a Facebook comment from Richard J. Junkermeyer Jr.
I think we're about to enter our segment on energy, I guess, from some of these comments. So, and first of all, thank you again, guys, so much for leaving these comments. We love helping you. We love your help driving the show. So, Richard Junkermeyer from Facebook. How would the diamond batteries that have nuclear waste then be applied to EVs? He finds the videos interesting. He worked for Ford and Dodge for years and would believe that this is the future and would love to get into working on these. Nobody in the area has got a clue. Well, I think the current lithium batteries that we have are difficult enough for a lot of these mechanics, but then moving into some nuclear waste batteries?
Well, you know, the last podcast, someone tipped us off to this, to the nuclear or the fusion concept, which we're going to cover in this podcast, by the way. This is another area that we can explore. Was unaware that they were putting nuclear waste inside batteries, but we will look into that and report back to you guys. It looks like Patrick Fisher joined us from LinkedIn. Good morning, Pete. Glad to see Gruber Company still going strong. Patrick worked here some time ago.
Hey!
Hope you're doing well, Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
Also from Bright Jeffrey on TikTok. Great work, guys. Hi, Gruber Motors. Good to see you, Bright Jeffrey. Van Goat Wagon on TikTok. Welcome back. That's a tough group to get into with truckers. We see smaller trucks pulling loads now, and gooseneck and five-wheel rigs. How many Tesla big rigs are on the road now? Oh, it's a good question. I don't know if there are too many on the road yet.
And then TikTok, Van Goat Wagon, Fusion. Yes, thoughts on government's announcement. We're going to cover that, so stay tuned.
Should we go ahead and get into that?
Well, let's see if we have something else here that came before then. The A.F.B. headquarters.
Oh, yeah.
A.F.B., by the way, is a battery manufacturer, and the acronym simply is American Battery Factory.
Creative.
Pretty simple, right. They are making a 2 million square feet investment in the state of Arizona. It will be the largest battery factory in the United States, and it would be in Tucson. It's going to be capable of creating 3 gigawatt per hour's worth of product, and it will be the first in a network of battery manufacturing facilities. They're planning on opening other locations in various parts of the U.S., possibly the world. It doesn't say here. But they are going to be done with this building, and this is another very aggressive construction deadline, 18, what is this, 12 to 14 months.
Oh.
That's a pretty short time. Now, Tesla did it in Shanghai, with a gigafactory. They spent over 2 years in Germany. I think Tucson will probably not be as restrictive as Germany was, so they may be able to pull this off. But for now, this site will be the largest commercial production gigafactory for LFP cells, which is the lithium iron battery compared to lithium ion. 2 million square feet under roof, and it will provide an estimated $1.2 billion in capital investment for Arizona, and the economic impact will be an additional $3.1 billion for Arizona. So good for Arizona. And as we were talking earlier, there's a lot of large, high-tech type activity beginning to percolate in this state.
Yeah, Jesse, you were talking about some of these things that are coming up as well.
Yeah, it's not verified yet. I've heard that there are some stuff coming to new plants, chip plants coming here, but I have to look into that.
Well, I know that it's basically been confirmed that it's not Panasonic. Who was it that's building a chip facility just up north?
Oh, the Taiwan company, TSMC. Yep. I screwed up the acronym. Sorry, guys, but I'll tell you a funny story about that. Yesterday, I'm working over at Gruber Motor Company toward the end of the day, and someone ushers somebody into the shop area there, and he comes toward me, and it's an older gentleman like myself, and shakes my hand. He says, "Pete, I'm DeVillo McCann." And I thought, my God, that name rings a bell. Suddenly it occurred to me, this is a guy that I was in high school with 53 years ago.
Aww.
That is now working at this TSMC plant up
kidding.
north. Yeah, he's past retirement, but he's doing this part-time now, and he's setting up some of their wafer fab type equipment. And it was good seeing DeVillo again, but it was kind of a mind blower to go back that far in the past and suddenly see somebody that you haven't seen for 53 years.
That's incredible. The hands of fate.
Yes,
Yoink.
yes.
That's awesome.
So moving along here, we've got a article here about this fusion project. And let me just give you some of the particulars, and then we can open this up for discussion, because as Jesse pointed out, this is the probably the most exciting thing that has happened to mankind, and we'll explain why in a moment. But scientists studying fusion energy at Lawrence Livermore National Labs in California announced Tuesday that they had crossed a long-awaited milestone in reproducing the power of the sun in a laboratory. This was December 5th at 1:30 a.m. And what it is the scientists have for decades talked about how fusion, the nuclear reaction that makes stars shine, could provide a future source of endless, bountiful, clean energy. The result was announced again Tuesday. It was a fusion reaction in a laboratory setting that actually, now get this is the caveat here, it produced more energy than it took to start the reaction. Now we're talking about perpetual motion and n+1, and it's actually 1.5 times the amount of energy that was put into it. The road ahead, of course, is now the possibilities for clean energy and an endless supply. They say that fusion can be deployed on a large scale. It would offer an energy source devoid of the pollution and greenhouse gases caused by burning fossil fuels and dangerous, long-lived radioactive waste created by current nuclear power plants, which use the splitting of uranium to produce energy. So, simply put, the way this works apparently is within the sun and stars, fusion continuously combines hydrogen atoms into helium, which produces sunlight and warmth that bathes the planets. Now, the way they did this is kind of interesting. Get down a little bit here. There we go. What they did was they took a small cylinder about the size of a pencil eraser. that contained a frozen nubbin of hydrogen encased in a diamond. A laser beam entered the top and bottom of the cylinder, vaporizing it, which then generated an inward onslaught of X-rays that compresses a BB-sized fuel pellet of deuterium and tritium, the heavier forms of hydrogen. In a brief moment lasting less than 100 trillionth of a second, it generated 2.05 megajoules of energy, roughly the equivalent of a pound of TNT, bombarded the hydrogen pellet, and outflowed neutron particles, the product of fusion, which carried about 3 megajoules of energy. But the important part again was, it was a factor of a 50% increase to the energy that was inserted. So we actually got more out of it than was originally put in.
Correct. Yeah, it was somewhere around, I think, 400 megajoules of energy that it takes to shoot those 192 lasers into the diamond. And from what I began to understand is that all the lasers do is heat up essentially a capsule that surrounds it and bursts the capsule to create the kinetic energy that forces that atom split in the tritium. And so it is incredible. I don't know, some people have not called it a milestone so much as it is the next step forward, where we're still putting in 400 megajoules of energy to be able to split that atom and get 2 back.
Okay, I got to step in here and say this is revolutionary. This is not just a step forward. And the reason I say that specifically is because this has never been achieved before. A lot of steps have been achieved along the way. This is much, much different because once we get the perpetual energy right, you guys are, a lot of these news articles, not you in particular, but a lot of these news articles are saying it's going to take, we had to put 400 in and all this stuff. Once you get perpetual energy that keeps growing as you feed it, the amount you put in at a certain point becomes irrelevant. Because
it's an engineering problem now. That's what's really cool, because you're absolutely right. And we've essentially figured out the basic mechanics. And so these scientists have now put the odds in their favor, where now all they have to do is tweak the engineering. And we could actually see more of this nuclear development to be able to, no, you're 100% right. And I didn't mean to talk down to the discovery by any means, because you're absolutely right. It is groundbreaking in that regard.
So what Jesse told me yesterday, before I even researched this, he says, Pete, people don't realize this is the greatest achievement in our lifetime and in the lifetime of mankind. Do you not feel that way, Jesse?
I definitely do. This has achieved something that for the last 60, 70 years, since we split the atom and created the bombs, this has been just a theory that hasn't been really truly proven. Now it has been proven in regard to, oops, sorry, let me change my camera. When you create the bomb, right, what that is a fusion reaction that's uncontrolled. So we already know that by starting the reaction, we get more out, and that's how we blow up entire cities with bombs, right? It's a crazy reaction that gives us much more than what was started with, right? So that's been around forever. What this does, what we have just proven, is that we can now control it, and we can do it in a very specific way. And over the next 10 years, when we perfect it, and maybe 20 years even, but 20 years in the grand scheme of things is nothing for us to have unlimited energy.
We can harness it finally.
It is unreal that it could very well happen within our lifetime to see these micro-scale nuclear reactors. Someone was just asking about the diamond batteries.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it seemed like it was so far off literally until 2 days ago.
What would be fascinating is we all complain about this 1,200-pound battery in these EVs. Can you imagine this kind of technology applied to an EV? You suddenly get rid of the weight. We have an Instagram question. And by the way, we'll be reporting a lot more on this fusion as it progresses and evolves. We're very excited about it, and we would like to continue to have you guys provide your inputs. Instagram, Maximax. Can I send you guys a picture of a Tesla with a side and quarter panel damage? And can you guys let us know your thoughts if there would be damage to the battery? The car spun off into a ditch. We get a few of these each year where the car was involved in an accident and the insurance company is unsure whether there is any battery damage, and of course they instantly total the car. Yes, there are ways you can determine whether the battery has been compromised. What we would need, though, taking pictures of the outside of the car or the collision damage on a sheet metal, aluminum in this case, wouldn't help us. What we need is detailed pictures of the battery, any compromises around the battery. And what we're going to be looking for there is fissures, splits, punctures, and then of course the conditions during the accident. If there was a puncture, for example, and it wasn't wet, the puncture can be fixed. Tesla's not going to do it, but it can be fixed. If, however, the puncture occurred and you went through some puddles and lots of water and rain, now we've got water inside the battery pack, and that changes everything. So pictures of the battery and the areas of damage around the battery would be helpful, and you can email that to ev@gruber.com, and we'll give you our opinion.
Good stuff. 9K2JW on Instagram. Good morning, Mr. Gruber. It's been a long time. How are you and your friend? Well, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
We're doing well, thank you.
How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing pretty good. And that's Anwar.
Anwar.
Oh, it's Anwar.
Yeah. Okay. You know, we were talking about this at the last podcast. After the podcast, we love what we do. This is fun. It's fun to interact with you guys. It's fun to answer questions. It's fun to get information from you guys. So, you know, we're here for the long run. So keep joining us, and we'll continue to grow this podcast.
Yeah, we have fun here in the studio. We've been having a great time, but you guys make it even more fun to get to come in and get to talk about all this really cool stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching and to continue to support. We love being able to chat with you guys and see where this goes.
You know, TikTok, Van Goatwagen, he summarizes this whole fusion thing perfectly. This will change everything.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Fully agree.
Yeah.
By the way, the timing on this, of course, is perfect because one of the other caveats here is most climate scientists and policymakers say that to achieve the goal of limiting warming to 2 degrees Celsius, or even more ambitious target of 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, the world must reach net zero emissions by 2050. And what are the consequences? Well, simply put, we may not have a world, or our grandchildren won't have a world. So it's vital that this kind of technology comes along, and we're able to capitalize on it and put it into play.
Yeah, it matters at the end of the day because we want to be able to provide a space for human flourishing. And when we're good, everyone else is good. And so, yeah, we do what we can.
Have some comments here from some of the people involved in the EV space other than Tesla. The fleet of light-duty vehicles from General Motors, Ford, Mercedes, BYD, Volvo, Jaguar, Land Rover will be totally emission-free by 2040 and 2035 in major markets, respectively. The CTO, Chief Technology Officer of Volvo, for example, declared that internal combustion engine vehicles had no future in the long run, following their announcement that they will be solely electric vehicles by 2030. Volvo also stated that they were firmly committed to being an electrical-only car manufacturer, and the changeover should happen by 2030.
I just saw an electric, it's the XC30? Ooh, is that right? XC40. Oh, I just saw, I feel terrible that I can't remember the model off the top of my head, but I just saw one the other day going down into Mesa.
Here in Arizona.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, just down the road. And it's funny because what's great about all this is that some of them look, you know, they're great looking vehicles, but you can't really tell that they're electric on the first glance. You basically have to look down under the bumper and see if they have a tailpipe. And if they don't, it's like, oh, it's an EV.
That's true. That has gotten to be the giveaway. Look for a exhaust port on the back of the car, and if that's not there, more than likely that's going to be an EV.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny. I was looking at it for a while. I was like, oh, that's a pretty nice looking Volvo. I don't think I'd seen that one.
I think Mark has one actually. Our CFO, I think he has one of those. Maybe we can have him talk about it next week.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, that's true. He just got one. Yeah, he had the Kia EV for a long time. We got 2 of those a few years ago.
The EV6?
Don't remember the model of it, but it's kind of boxy. It looks like that Cube car, you know?
Oh, the not the Soul EV.
It's a Soul EV.
Oh, Soul EV.
That's it. Yep. There you go. All right. So Mary Barr is in the news. GM's CEO. She says, after one of the most challenging years in recent history, We think that this moment will prove to be an inflection point, the time when our global reliance on petrol and diesel-powered vehicles will begin transitioning to an all-electric future. Now, this is GM saying this, guys. This is the company that in the 90s in the last century decided that the EV1 wasn't worth continuing with and crushed them all. This is remarkable that they've come around to this understanding.
That's not the same CEO, right? That'd be funny.
It is
No.
not the same CEO.
No.
No, we talked about him in the last podcast, and he offered regrets that it was his worst decision in his entire life.
Although hindsight's 2020 on that one. I mean, who would have thought that they'd spring up so fast? And it's also funny to note that GM, I mean, over the last couple of years, they've been some of the most vocal people about going full battery electric, even since the introduction of the Bolt.
Now, later that same month that she made this statement, GM declared that its intention was to completely get rid of tailpipe emission from new light-duty cars by 2035. So we're glad to see that GM is jumping on the bandwagon. And now here's another one, VW. After seeing get this, a threefold increase in its electric vehicle sales from the previous year, VW reiterated GM's assessment, claiming that 2020 marks a turning point in customer sentiment regarding electric vehicles.
There's another big company, I don't know if you wanted to get to it yet, but Hyundai Kia, also just crazy outperformers in the last couple of years, especially with the Ioniq 5, the EV6, and the Genesis EV60. Goodness, another failure to remember model names. But regardless, those three models have been hilariously popular in the last few years, and for good reason. The Ioniq 5 is considered one of the best EVs besides the Model 3 and the Model Y.
I've got I've got an item here on Hyundai, but we've got a couple of questions. Let's entertain those, and then we'll get into Hyundai.
Yeah, from Van Goat Wagon, thank you for your time. Well, thank you for stopping by, Van Goat Wagon. We love to get to see you. And another quick question from Demotic Shadow on YouTube. What are your thoughts on the 4680 batteries and the 1000-volt charging? What do you think about the relationship between these two?
Well, the first part of that question, it's tough being an EV auto manufacturer right now because it seems like technology is accelerating quickly, and there's a huge investment made in production tooling and facilities and production lines for these various technologies, only to possibly have them obsoleted by the time you get to production. Now, that didn't happen with the 4680 battery. The 4680 battery is definitely an improvement on its predecessors, from the 18650, the 2170. With some of these newer technologies that are beginning to emerge now, the 4680 seems to be a cell that will be around for a while. The biggest problem they seem to be facing is raw material shortages for any of these cells. And because, again, of demand. You know, it's not just Tesla that is now looking for lithium and cobalt and some of these other metals used to make these EV batteries, but all of these other up-and-coming manufacturers, some of them who have huge clout, like GM. Remember, the smaller ones are going to have a tougher time than the big ones because they're not as important to the vendors. And it's going to be much tougher for an Atlas, for example, to get cells than Tesla or GM.
I just hope it doesn't stop Canoe.
Yeah.
I'm here for Canoe. I know you're about it too, Richard.
And Aptera.
100%.
We're all rooting for that little solar three-wheeler. That is a cool car, too.
Absolutely.
So the other part of your question, Demotic Shadow, is the 1000-volt charging. You know, we all knew that it was going to head that direction. We're 400 in the United States here mostly. Europe has already gone to 800. Again, the higher the voltage, the smaller the wire. It's that simple. The less amps you have to push for the same amount of energy. Voltage doubles, current goes in half. The analogy that I like to use for people that are having a hard time getting their head around this, and this is something our shop teacher in high school, where I took electricity and electronics, gave us a metaphor. He said, think of it as water. Voltage is the amount of pressure in a pipe, and amperage is the volume of water. So if you have a very thin pipe, you're going to need a whole lot more pressure to push the same amount of water through that pipe. If you've got a huge pipe, don't worry about it. You know, very little pressure will get you a lot of volume of water. This is one of the reasons that the high tension lines that are crisscrossing the various parts of the world are thin wires, thin by the size of garden hoses basically, but they are moving millions of volts across those wires, and hundreds of thousands of amps. So again, the higher the voltage, the smaller the charge cable. And remember, our charge cables at 400 volts are getting sort of unwielding at this point. You go to some of these superchargers now, and you've got a charge cable where you need some upper arm strength in order to handle it, and it's thicker than the size of a garden hose. We're talking about 1.5 inches or more. It looks like we've got another YouTube question or comment.
From JPL
JP Laritis is the way I read that.
Jiplaritis. Thank you for your comment on YouTube. GM and others have come around because Tesla became a game changer. No one does it as well as Tesla. Yeah.
And he says Elon rocks. Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's been killing the game. Absolutely. And no, that's an absolutely fair assessment. If it weren't for Tesla's success, we may not have seen this movement. Absolutely. And for more, if you want to see this full experience, if you want to be able to continue to keep, well, you don't have to necessarily. We love all of your comments from TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Thank you guys so much for joining. But definitely recommend checking us out on YouTube if you want to see the full experience. If you want to see our background that we've got behind us, you can find us on just about every platform.
Well, let's tell them about the background again then for just a moment. That is a small town, village actually, in southern Germany, Bavaria. You see the Alps in the background there, and this was a little bed and breakfast that we stayed at just outside my hometown. And it was a nice warm summer day, little cobblestone patio there, and we thought it'd be a great backdrop. By the way, we're also streaming in higher definition mode these days, and if it continues at the level of detail that we're presenting now, we're going to have to get some makeup teams here because all of our warts and zits will show soon. Yeah, it looks like we've got another YouTube comment here.
From My Melt on YouTube. Remember the company Tesloop was running Tesla's round trip shuttles Los Angeles to Vegas exclusively and successfully supercharging all the way. So the battery packs actually had a long service life. Yeah, that's true. And we've also seen that with the Tesla semis recently, that these even standard trips can also be upheld pretty well by these larger batteries.
Looks like YouTube Oscar Millen is asking, does GM survive the EV revolution or do they go out of business? Our take on this is we don't want to see anybody go out of business. We need every EV manufacturer on the planet to help us transition to a clean, sustainable energy usage for transportation. We hope they all survive. But again, as we pointed out, for an existing manufacturer, an incumbent, spending a century making, with production lines and in infrastructure geared toward ICE vehicles, it will be a daunting task for them to pivot and begin to change those lines to electric vehicles. So far, they seem to be doing a pretty good job. So we hope they survive. Yes, Jesse.
Also, real quick about that, I was gonna have Richard say something real quick. He talked to a guy that actually had a Hummer. So to talk a little bit about how the EVs on that side from those legacy OEMs are coming.
Yeah, so I was at Fry's and just parking my my Model S at the charger, and right next to the stall was just this massive, like absolutely massive Hummer. So I got out and I talked with him a little bit about it, but this thing was clean. It looked really nice. Yeah.
So he took good care of it. Yeah.
The guy said he really liked it too, right?
Yeah. The gentleman said that it was his first EV.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of an adjustment switching from being able to go to the gas station and just put gas in and leave. But he said he drove it all the way from New Mexico and he was loving it. And I was just blown away at how clean it looked. It looked like amazing, like had just come out of the factory. And it was really something that I found that was really interesting was the headlights. When charging, that's the bar that tells you how charged it is.
Oh, really?
So it'll add a little light bar once it gets to another level. And like I saw one go and land in a state.
Sure.
So it gauged it out. I thought that was really neat.
Everybody's been telling Rivians to do that because they have the bar as well, but they just kind of flash in and out with a green. I don't know if that actually does a little charging thing like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, the Hummer definitely does, and I think it's really cool.
So we've got a military vehicle that he was taking to a grocery store, basically.
Basically.
People have been doing that since the invention of military vehicles, I think.
Didn't Arnold Schwarzenegger also have a Hummer back in the day?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that seems a fitting vehicle for him,
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a huge change, though, right? Because that Hummer that you're talking about, that he was driving back in the 90s or whatever, got, 8 miles to the gallon?
Probably
And now,
5.
now we have Hummer EVs, which is crazy.
Well, they're still thirsty vehicles comparatively, but they're also just, like you said, they're gargantuan.
Absolutely massive. Like makes the Cybertruck look puny.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Oh, we want to see a Cybertruck pull with a Hummer. Now that would be
That'd be a
that'd
viral
be a viral
video.
video.
Yep.
There we
That
go.
would be
Yeah.
cool. As soon as we find somebody with a Cybertruck, when they finally come out,
Right.
I'll call up the owner of the Hummer and be like, hey, we've got a video idea.
Yeah, but you know what
That's,
Tesla
What are you guys
will do?
doing? Yeah, what are you guys doing Thursday?
After Tesla loses, they're going to bring in their semi.
Oh, yeah. And then that'll prompt a response from GM. They'll have to make a semi.
There you go.
We'll just
yeah.
have to start this whole truck
And
pull
we
race.
all win because we get to see more.
Yeah, and we get more electric vehicles on the road, replacing those fossil fuel burners. Very cool. So Hyundai Motor, all right, reports that its global vehicle sales in November amounted to 351,000 units. This is just November, mind you, which is a 10% increase. But you know what the 10% increase was mostly responsible for was their EV segment, which began to grow, which was up 51% year over year. Now, of course, in the U.S., we've got the Ioniq 5, right? We don't have the Ioniq 6 yet. And, but they're pretty excited about that vehicle. They, in November, apparently, they achieved a new record of 21,500 units. And that's a 60% year-over-year increase. That was not November, I'm sorry, that was year to date, yeah. So I have a hard time with that name. Hyundai? Yeah, if you want to pronounce every vowel in there, you're going to be in trouble. So we just say Hyundai. We do what we do in America, which is ignore certain vowels. By the
Forgive
way,
us, our friends in Korea.
This is a funny bit of input. I'm German, and when I first got here, I didn't speak any English. So all these English words, I was sounding them out in German. And in German, you say every single vowel and every single consonant. So spelling bees in schools are completely worthless because by the time you've said the word, you've given everybody a clue exactly how to spell it, right? Well, so I come here and I see things like knife and I'm going, wait a minute, what happened to, what happened to the K? So what I would do is sound it out in German. And I was a spelling ace in the United States in grammar school. I won every spelling bee because every word that I was approached with, I was sounding out in German. So anyway, how did I get there? Oh, the Hyundai, all right? The Ioniq 5 remains the top model in Hyundai's EV lineup. In November, the total sales volume exceeded 10,000 for the second time ever. And the company also noted that through December, year to date, they sold 88,000 of these units. And you know what amazes me is, despite this kind of competition, the demand for Teslas is still overwhelming.
Right.
So
huge backlog of orders on Tesla's end.
It just shows you how hot this new EV segment is.
From Vega Wagon on TikTok, are we going to see an uptick in EV recalls and issues? Or sorry, are we seeing an uptick in EV recalls and issues? Well, I think inevitably, since there's also just more EVs.
Well, and getting back to the Tesla trajectory, there are many things that you can't flush out during the early design processes and validation and testing processes that reveal themselves later on once it's in the user base. The thing with Tesla, for example, the door handles, the window regulators, and then, of course, battery seals. These new incumbent or these new EV manufacturers are going to have these types of problems. Expect it, learn to deal with it. Fortunately, they'll have service centers, and all of this work will be done under warranty. But are we planning on seeing an uptick in EV recalls? Yes. It's unfortunate, but you've got a brand new product here. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's all I have for agenda.
Yep. Just so you guys know, we are at 59 minutes.
Well,
59.
perfect
So
timing.
we're right there. Okay. All right. Again, we appreciate everybody joining us. TikTok, all of the other platforms.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts.
We always leave some out, though, it seems like.
I know.
But
Well,
you
if
know-
we didn't get to you, thank you so much for watching. We still love you, and we hope we get to see you more.
And a couple of ways that you can get your questions answered if they didn't get answered in this podcast is our YouTube channel, Gruber Motors, is rich with videos. We're going to release another one today, actually, on valuation of electric vehicles. And let's go into that a moment, because this is an important concept. We have a Tesla Roadster matchmaking site on our website, which we started a couple of years ago as a free service to the Tesla Roadster owners, thinking that there would be people that want to sell their cars and they want to bypass the auction experience where nobody really understands your car. You can't talk to the seller, and they really don't know what they're selling, you know? So this became very successful. We currently have 30 or 40 cars for sale out there, Roadsters. And it's still free, by the way, and it will be. We offer this as a free service. And one of the customers who is moving out of the country listed his Roadster for $130,000, which is about the going rate from the first of the year. It's been a bit soft lately because of all of the stuff that's going on. But so then he lowered it to 110, and it still wasn't moving. So he called me the other day and he said, Pete, let's go to $89,000. And I said, man, you're well below market. He says, well, you know, I'm leaving the country. Car's got to move. So the car hadn't sold at 110 even. It's got 90,000 miles on the odometer. It's probably the highest mileage Roadster we have in our listing. Now, with an internal combustion engine car, yeah, that's cause for concern. But with an electric vehicle, it doesn't mean a lot. So what our video does is it shows why mileage on an EV is not as important as other factors, and age is much more important with an electric vehicle than mileage. In an ICE vehicle, you've got a couple thousand moving parts. You've got bearings, you've got rings and pistons, and you've got fuel delivery, and you've got orifices, and you've got all kinds of stuff, and emissions type of sensors that will rust and rot, and you know. None of that exists in an electric vehicle. You have very, very few moving parts, but what you have is a bunch of electronics. And electronics are going to decline and age whether the car is being driven or not. And there's the critical difference. So a 90,000 mile car applying the same ICE vehicle rules to valuation is a incorrect way of handling it. And there's probably a bargain there if that rule is being applied. So that's what this video is about. We encourage you to watch it on YouTube. It'll be posted later on this morning, and I think you'll find it informative. Well, if there is nothing else.
Oh yeah, I've got something real quick. So another way to get your questions answered is go to any piece of our content, anything more recent, and just say, I'm from the podcast, here's my question. Or I'm here from the podcast, here's my question. I'll go through and pull those, and that way we can get to the questions first thing next live stream.
Fair enough.
Okay,
Excellent.
one other thing as well. And Zane, sorry if I was a little abrasive about the fusion thing, just very passionate.
Oh, hey, that's what makes it fun.
Well, no, you are right. It was a step. I personally like to think that this is a very, very big step, but you're right, it is a step. And I encourage everyone to go out there and watch the actual 2-hour presentation where about 6 or 7 of the scientists that actually participated and made this a reality from the NIF, they talked all the technical details and specifics about what happened, and you could really tell in their eyes and in the way that they're speaking that they actually accomplished something serious. I encourage people to go watch that directly from the Department of Energy rather than watching all these YouTube reviews and things like that. Go and review it for yourself and make your own decision, because this is a very impactful thing that personally I'm very passionate about. I know a lot of the guys here are, because we deal with future tech, and yeah, I just think it's a great achievement. So,
yes, sir.
Well said, Jesse. Thank you. And finally, YouTube, getting back to YouTube for a moment, if there was a question that wasn't answered, check out that YouTube channel, because many of these types of questions that you ask each week are already answered in the form of a video with a lot more detail than we're able to present in this podcast.
Or in a previous episode of the podcast.
True, true. And we're starting to organize those, right, guys?
Which, shout out to you guys for making these new thumbnails. They look phenomenal.
Yeah, we're doing thumbnails, and I've been taking down timestamps during the show now, so there'll be timestamps for people to go through and find the pieces of content that they want to review, and we're stepping up the production a little bit.
You, my man, are killing the game. My man.
Well, thank you for another successful podcast at the Gruber Motor Company and Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
And I'm Zane Courtney.
And we will see you next week, Tuesday at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time.